Hello friends, it's Nancy from Astrology and Angel Mediums, and today I have a weekly check-in reading for the week of Sunday, July 26th, all the way through Saturday, August the 1st. So this is going to be the last official week of July, which I kind of feel like everything's been flying by. Today I want to use this Blood Moon Tarot deck. I haven't actually used it for any kind of readings, and I'm excited to see what we have here. But I hope everyone is doing well and that you had a lovely week and that you're taking care of yourself. It's been very hot, so I've been trying to just stay indoors and not be outside too much. But it has been crazy hot and we're just here going through it. So let's see what we have in store for this week now that Mercury retrograde is back, direct. But we also do have to take into account that Saturn has stationed retrograde and will be retrograde for the next 6 months until December 10th. So it's a good time to look at what kind of lessons, boundaries, restrictions, as well as any kind of foundational work that we've been wanting to focus on, what is kind of going on with it. Are we sticking to our guns? Are we kind of looking at, how we are showing up for ourselves in different ways? I think it's a really fantastic time when we have these retrogrades to take a step back and kind of readjust whatever hasn't really been working in our favor, what hasn't been aligning with our true intentions of what we want for our lives without really, trying to force things. I know sometimes with retrogrades, and it may feel like you're probably there's always something in retrograde, and there is in different ways, and that's just how it is. But I think the biggest lesson and the biggest takeaway many of us can kind of experience with the retrograde is that it gives us an opportunity to just reshape what hasn't really been, kind of controlled in some way, or what we've just kind of let loose in our lives. So that's kind of my little anecdote on retrogrades. All right, so let's see what we need to know as a collective this week. So we have the 8 of Skins, which I believe would be the 8 of Wands in this deck. What do we need to do this week as a collective? We have the Empress. What do we need to release as a collective? We have the 4 of Honey, which I believe that is the 4 of Pentacles. And then finally, what do we need to contemplate this week? We have the Page of Dreams or the Page of Swords. So it looks like we're going to have some things to kind of keep in mind. I know we do have the Aquarius full moon. I kept saying the new moon last week. You know what? And I can't even blame it on recovery medication because it's not even that. Your girl is just, time is moving so weird since I've been home, and I think I'm kind of losing a sense of keeping up with things, if that makes sense, because I've just been kind of reading books instead. I've been watching old movies. I haven't really been plugged in, trying to see what's going on. There are a few days where I was just kind of endlessly scrolling on my phone, and it's crazy how quickly it just absorbs you and just kind of you get caught up in it. So I'm trying to avoid doing so much of that because I feel like it's not the best use of my time while I'm at home and I'm trying to recover. So let's kind of talk about the cards for this week. I know that I did pull a moon message last week because I really thought last week was this week. I don't know, whatever. Anyways, and that's probably why I've been kind of oh my gosh, I have a whole other month before I get to go back to my regular work, and I've been missing it. So we're going to pull another moon message. We're just going to do that. We're going to figure it out as we go. I appreciate you guys giving me so much grace as sometimes, I don't know what the hell I'm talking, and slow it down. That's funny. Yeah, slow it down. Very retrograde kind of message. And we had like Barbelt's basket, you know, kind of energy going on, which I know for some people was like super intense and super crazy. And, you know, a lot of people were kind of talking about the implications of it this, you know, during this time and what to kind of expect. And so here we go. All right, let's actually get into these card meanings and what we have available to us to kind of have an understanding about. So with the Eight of Skins, I'm going to just cover her up because she's a little indecent here. So with the Eight of Wands, I think with what we need to know is that essentially this is kind of giving us this clarity of direction. It's kind of saying like, hey, this is an opportunity for us to really look at, you know, what it is that we've been working towards and kind of getting that second wind, that sense of I can keep going. I do have the energy. Now, I know for many of us with everything that's been going on, many of us are just feeling tired. We're feeling kind of exhausted. We're feeling a little bit kind of worn down. I know many people I've talked to have just been kind of saying like, you know, I just feel really tired. I don't know what comes next. I don't know what it's going to look like. And I think for many of us, we're trying to kind of find that sense of what do I need to do? What do I need to focus on? What can I do? What can I focus on moving forward? And so I think with this Eight of Skins, we're kind of given a little bit of this redirection of like, we're getting that second one, we're getting this kind of inspiration. When I think of wands, I think of not just fire in the sense of the warmth and the life that it kind of allows us to live. When we think of what fire has done for us as humankind, I think of how quickly it moves, how destructive it can be, how it really removes everything without just picking and choosing, if that makes sense. And so when I think of the Eight of Wands, I think very much of this very fast moving kind of like force that is kind of saying like, all right, this is going to allow us to burn away whatever hasn't been working, is no longer for us. And so it allows us to become a little bit more inspired about what it is that we want, what it is that we need, and how we should show up in the future, if that makes sense. And so there's a lot of potential here for us to kind of shed the skin, like with all the snakes here, that we've outgrown, to kind of transition into, I have become something else, or I'm becoming something else. So I have to kind of transition out of where I have been and what I have going on. So I think that this week will be one where we may redirect our inspiration. We may be looking at some energy. I'm going to kind of like cover these girls here. We can kind of redirect some of this energy a little bit and kind of see what we have. And I'm just going to turn it over because I'm not trying to get, you know, like, I'm not trying to piss anybody off, I guess, on line here. All right. So next for what we need to do is we have the Empress. Now, when I think of the Empress, I think it's very much this like luscious, fertile, like just very nurturing kind of energy. This energy that's kind of asking us to show up in ways that feels very luscious. And I think with what we need to do is that maybe we need to take a time out in some ways. Maybe we've been too focused on like just going and doing and trying to like get to the next phase, that we haven't been taking time out to kind of enjoy what we have, really, you know, kind of take the harvest and the bounty and really celebrate it in some way. So this may be a time where it's kind of saying like, hey, we need to look at, you know, what is fertile? What do we need to kind of infuse with a little bit more of this energy, this creativity, this, you know, sense of, again, kind of nurturing and lusciousness, what is kind of growing in our lives that we haven't really allowed ourselves to enjoy in some ways. And so maybe it's time to just like take care of ourselves. I didn't realize like how nice it can feel, even if it's something just as simple as that, or just like making sure my space is organized, making sure things are nice, you know, that things smell nice and whatever, which can seem kind of silly, especially given everything that's going on in the world. But for me, it has kind of felt very grounding, very like, I'm here. I've been like making a lot of nourishing foods, trying to focus on like making things that are delicious and nutritious and colorful, and allowing us to feel very like rooted and grounded in just like eating and enjoying things, and you know, really nourishing our bodies in different ways. And so, you know, it's one of these things where I feel like maybe this week it's kind of saying like, okay, what we need to do is kind of not, it's almost like she's like in her little cave, and so it's almost saying like, hey, you got to kind of take care of your own space and root yourself a little bit more in your experience now. And this is a major card, so there may be some big things that we haven't really been giving ourselves in some way, and so maybe it's time to kind of move back into that energy of taking care of our hearts and our souls in that manner. Now, with what we need to release, we have the Four of Honey, which is going to be the Four of Pentacles. To me, I really like to look at the Four of Pentacles as this energy that is maybe feeling a little bit challenged by what we have. And so maybe we feel like I've been working so hard on my foundation. I've been working so hard on like creating something stabilizing and like firm enough for me that I'm like challenged a little bit to open myself up to the possibility of sharing or to give of what I have. And so maybe you kind of are looking at like, well, I only have a little bit of this, and so I don't really know how to do more or give more, or, you know, kind of move out of this energy, so to speak. So I think with this, with what we need to release is maybe the sense of, I only have so much, I can only do so much, I, you know, don't always know what I need to do with this part of myself. And so maybe there's a little bit of this kind of energy to ourselves this week that is kind of asking us to rise above that, to not be bored and kind of discontented with the boringness of what we're building at the current moment. Because sometimes whenever we're in the beginning stages of something, or maybe even just kind of like the middle phase of something, we feel a little bit like, oh, it's just like boring. It's not really giving me anything. There's not really a challenge. There's not really an obstacle here for me to work towards. And so the daily part of what we're doing may feel a little bit like not as exciting. And I think with the Empress, it's kind of saying like, it's not so much about like having excitement, but to like create something that feels nurturing, so that we don't feel like we're craving like a change and things to kind of shift and move. And so it may feel a little bit boring in some ways right now, but we have a little bit of this like energy that's kind of reminding us like, okay, we have to kind of maybe again like slow it down, like the Moon card is saying for us this week. Now with the Page of Dreams is going to be what we need to contemplate. This is the Page of Swords. And so to me, the pages are going to be a really lovely reminder of going out with this like positive expectancy of what is going to come next, and kind of look at where we maybe are lacking some experience and being okay with it. Now with what we need to contemplate is that maybe this is a time to look at, you know, what are we thinking about? What are we clear on? You know, what is our truth in a lot of ways? And it may not feel very steady. It may not feel very, like, we don't really have things fleshed out completely. And so, and that's the thing with the pages, is that they're almost like little fools, right? They are, not to say naive in the sense of like immature. I think it's more of this, like there's an innocence that tends to come with a page and with the Fool, of saying, you know, I'm going to just kind of go out there and see what happens. And, you know, I will kind of figure it out as I go. And I think that's kind of the energy a lot this week for many of us with this Page of Dreams, is that maybe we're kind of saying, you know what, I'm just going to get out there and I'm going to try something and I'm going to see how it goes. because I need to get clear on what I believe, and I need to allow myself to feel a little bit more empowered. So maybe this is a week where we start to get a little bit more clear on ourselves and what we want and what we need. And I feel like that those are beautiful lessons for the Leo season. I feel like it's a wonderful time to empower not just yourself, but also like what you want, what you need, to really step more into your personal truth in a lot of ways. And while Leos may get a little bit of like a crazy rap on some stuff, because, you know, they're kind of seen as like selfish and blah, blah, blah. But is it actually selfish, or is it really understanding that at the end of the day, we're all individuals, and like that's the point of our kind of soul's mission, is to kind of show up in ways that are authentic to us, even if it doesn't always get received in that manner by others. So I'm just saying, maybe this is a week where we're kind of looking at, how am I showing up? Why am I showing up this way? What does it mean for me? And what is it that I value, not just within myself, but also in my experience as I kind of move into this next thing. So with our moon message, we have slow it down. And so I know for me personally this week, and even just like the last couple of weeks, because I have felt so much better than I was comparatively to just even 6 weeks ago, I have been maybe not honoring this lesson. And I think for many of us, when we are uncomfortable, when things feel too rote, when they feel too boring, we may just want to kind of like move through it and just hurry up and get to the next thing. I want to, like, there's that anticipation, that sense of what comes next. What is the next thing that can distract me? And I think especially nowadays with our levels of distractibility in so many areas of our lives, I think a lot of us have been kind of struggling with not trying to find like the next shiny thing that's going to allow us to have a sense of a feeling or connection or something. And so I think with this Aquarius full moon that will be happening this week on Thursday, we're kind of getting a little bit of the sense of like, we need to slow it down. We've been going and going and going, and we're just like trying to get through to the next thing, and all of the milestones and all of the checklist and all of the pressure that we've been putting on ourselves is maybe, not to say like endangering us or anything like that, but maybe in a lot of ways is kind of hindering us from being able to be present where we are and to kind of enjoy things as we are right now at this current moment. So I think this week is going to be an interesting one. We have a lot of different lessons with the Eight of Wands kind of giving us this like redirection and looking at, you know, where are we getting this is like second wind and this opportunity to kind of move into the next thing in a beautiful way, with the Empress kind of reminding us of having a little bit of this lusciousness and this beauty, and, you know, looking at our own creativity, like what are we creating, what are we doing, with the Four of Pentacles, with what we need to let go. This isn't a time to just feel like you have to keep everything to yourself. This is a time for maybe building connection and community for not just yourself. And I feel like that's a very Aquarian lesson of like, how are we showing up for humanity? How are we showing up in our community? As well as maybe empowering ourselves in new ways and kind of connecting a little bit more with what empowers us, with what allows us to find our personal truth, and also getting a little bit more clear on maybe what we believe and what we can have in so many different ways. So I think it's going to be a great time for us to maybe slow it down a little bit. I know it can be challenging as we're moving through this energy of summer. I think many of us are like, I just want to go, go, go. But maybe it is a good time to say, all right, let me bring it back a little bit. If the lessons from Mercury retrograde have felt a little bit of like a challenge, and now we have Saturn retrograde. It's kind of telling us, it's like, all right, we got to kind of like wind it back a little bit because we've been pushing too hard for too long, and so we need to kind of like kick it back into a lower gear so that we can really process what's happening. So I want to say thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you guys watching my little videos. I really hope you are taking care of yourself. Please take care, stay safe, and as always, make good choices. Bye.